I never thought I'd have to use the envelope I discovered in my father-in-law's study last month. But watching my mother-in-law advance toward my son with scissors made my decision crystal clear. This ridiculous hair has to go, Barbara declared, waving the scissors dangerously close to my 8-year-old Tommy's face. No grandson of mine will look like some adopted street urchin at my Thanksgiving dinner. Tommy pressed himself against my legs, his long auburn waves, grown proudly over the past year, trembling along with his bottom lip. The same auburn waves that matched mine perfectly had somehow made Barbara question his place in the family. Put the scissors down, I said firmly, reaching into my purse, or I'll be forced to share some interesting documents I found while helping Dad organize his office. The Thanksgiving preparations around us ground to a halt. My sister-in-law Susan stopped mashing potatoes. My husband Mark froze with a turkey baster in hand. Even the children, usually racing through the house like tornadoes, sensed the tension and went quiet. Barbara's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched. I don't know what you think you found, Patricia, but nothing gives you the right to interfere with how I handle my grandson's appearance. Interesting choice of words, I replied, sliding out the manila envelope, especially coming from someone who spent her first 5 years in St. Mary's Home for Children. The scissors clattered to the floor. For 15 years, I'd watched Barbara build her carefully curated image of the perfect family matriarch. She turned every holiday into a showcase of the pristine Matthews bloodline. Her favorite topic was how the Matthews genes were so strong, so dominant, that you could spot a Matthews child from across the room. Except, as I discovered, Barbara hadn't been born a Matthews at all. "You're delusional," Barbara stammered, but the color had drained from her face. "Mark, control your wife." My husband stepped forward, confusion etched across his features. "Mom, what's she talking about?" I opened the envelope slowly, remembering how I'd found it tucked behind decades of tax returns. "Your mother has some interesting adoption papers from 1962. Seems the perfect Matthews bloodline isn't so perfect after all." "Those are private." Barbara lunged for the envelope, but I stepped back, keeping Tommy safely behind me. "Private? Like how you privately told Tommy's teacher last week that you were concerned about his origins because his hair doesn't match the Matthews signature dark waves." Mark's head snapped toward his mother. "You did what?" Barbara's hands fluttered to her pearl necklace, her security blanket in times of stress. "I was only thinking of the family image. Tommy's hair, it's so different." "It's exactly like mine," I said, "because he's my son. But you've spent 8 years trying to erase any trace of me from him." The hair comments, the snide remarks about his freckles, the constant comparisons to Mark's baby pictures. "Someone needs to maintain standards," Barbara shot back, though her voice wavered. "This family has a legacy." "A legacy built on lies?" I pulled out the first document. "Because according to this, you were adopted by the Matthews when you were 5. Your real name wasn't even Barbara, it was Betty Smith." The kitchen fell so silent you could hear the turkey timer ticking. Susan's hand covered her mouth, and Mark stepped closer to read the paper I held. "Mom," his voice cracked slightly, "is this true?" Barbara sank into a kitchen chair, her perfectly pressed Thanksgiving outfit crumpling. "You don't understand, none of you do. I built everything around belonging to this family. The Matthews name gave me everything: status, respect, a real family." "And that gives you the right to terrorize my son about his appearance?" I asked. "To make him feel like he doesn't belong." Tears smeared Barbara's carefully applied makeup. "I just wanted him to fit in, to have what I fought so hard to achieve." By making him hate parts of himself. I ran my fingers through Tommy's auburn waves. By teaching him that love comes with conditions. Mark picked up the fallen scissors, his hands shaking slightly. "All these years, Mom. All your comments about bloodlines and family traits. Was it because you were afraid we'd find out?" Barbara's silence was answer enough. "Tommy," I said softly to my son, who was watching his grandmother with wide eyes, "would you like to tell Grandma why you've been growing your hair?" My brave boy stepped forward, though he kept hold of my hand. "I'm growing it for kids with cancer," he said quietly, "like Dad's friend Mr. Steve, who lost his hair during treatment. When it's long enough, I'm going to donate it." The revelation hit Barbara like a physical blow. She looked at the scissors Mark held, then at Tommy's kind face, so much like his father's despite the hair color she despised. She started, then stopped, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, keeping my voice level. You're going to apologize to Tommy. Then we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner, and tomorrow we're all going to have a long conversation about family, acceptance, and what really makes someone belong. And the scissors stay away from his hair, Mark added firmly, finally finding his voice against his mother. Barbara nodded, looking smaller somehow without her shield of family superiority. Tommy, she whispered. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Tommy, showing more maturity than his grandmother ever had, stepped forward and patted her hand. It's okay, Grandma. Dad says everyone has stuff they're scared of people finding out. Like how he's scared you'll find out he was the one who broke your fancy vase last Christmas, not the cat. Mark coughed awkwardly as Barbara let out a surprised laugh that sounded suspiciously like a sob. I tucked the envelope away, knowing its contents had served their purpose. Sometimes the best way to teach empathy is to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, or in this case, to face your own reflection in the mirror you've been holding up to others. Now, I said, who's ready to help me set the table? Tommy, would you like to show Grandma the placement cards you made at school? As my son eagerly retrieved his art project, I caught Barbara watching him with new eyes. The scissors lay forgotten on the counter, and with them, hopefully, her need to cut away any parts of our family that didn't fit her perfect image. The turkey timer dinged, marking the end of one era and the beginning of another. One where family wouldn't be measured by blood or appearance, but by the love we chose to give each other. The rest of Thanksgiving dinner passed in a haze of awkward silences, punctuated by overly enthusiastic comments about the food. Barbara barely touched her plate, pushing turkey and stuffing around like a child avoiding vegetables. Every few minutes her eyes drifted to Tommy's hair, then quickly darted away whenever she caught me watching. It wasn't until dessert that the next bomb dropped. So Betty Smith, my father-in-law George suddenly said, making everyone at the table freeze. He'd been unusually quiet since my revelation about Barbara's adoption. That's why you refused to let me look into our family medical history when Mark was born. Barbara's fork clattered against her plate. George, please. No, he continued, his voice growing stronger. For 35 years, I've respected your privacy. But after what happened today, our children deserve the whole truth. Mark set down his pumpkin pie. What truth, Dad? George pulled out his wallet, removing a worn photograph. Your mother didn't just hide her adoption. She hid her entire family. George, don't, Barbara pleaded, but he placed the photo on the table. It showed a younger Barbara, probably in her teenage years, standing with another girl who could have been her twin. You have a sister, Susan gasped. Had, Barbara whispered, tears streaming down her face. We were both at Street Mary's, the Matthews. They only wanted one child. The revelation hung heavy in the air. Tommy, bless his innocent heart, asked the question we were all thinking. What happened to your sister, Grandma? Barbara's hands shook as she reached for her water glass. Margaret. Her name was Margaret. She aged out of the system while I got my new family, my new name, my new life. Did you ever try to find her? Mark asked. I couldn't. Barbara's voice cracked. The Matthews made me promise. New life, new start. No looking back. They said it would confuse everyone if people knew I was adopted, especially since they told all their friends I was their biological child. Suddenly, her obsession with appearances, with fitting in, with family bloodlines, it all made terrible sense. But surely after you were grown, Susan pressed. After you married Dad. Barbara shook her head. I was too afraid. What if she hated me? What if she told everyone the truth? I had built this perfect life, this perfect image. I couldn't risk. Risk what? I interrupted. Risk people knowing you're human. That family isn't about matching hair color or some mythical perfect bloodline. You don't understand. Barbara snapped, but the words lacked her usual venom. I spent my entire childhood watching families pick other children. Never me, never Margaret. When the Matthews chose me, it was like winning the lottery. But the ticket came with conditions. Like erasing your sister, Mark's voice was quiet but firm. Barbara flinched. Tommy, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Is that why you don't like my hair, Grandma? Because it reminds you of your sister. The table fell silent. Barbara stared at my son, seeing him, really seeing him, perhaps for the first time. Margaret had red hair, she whispered. Auburn waves, just like yours. The Matthews. They said it wasn't sophisticated enough. They had my hair dyed dark brown before they even signed the adoption papers. Tommy touched his hair thoughtfully. Did she want to help people too? She. Barbara's voice caught. She wanted to be a nurse. She used to patch up all the younger kids at Street Mary's when they got hurt. Like how I want to help kids with cancer. Barbara nodded, tears flowing freely now. I think George said gently, it's time we helped Margaret's sister be as brave as she was. He slid a folder across the table. Barbara's hands trembled as she opened it. What is this? I hired a private investigator, George admitted. 20 years ago. I've known where Margaret was this whole time, waiting for you to be ready. Barbara's head snapped up. No. Is she? She's alive, George confirmed. Living in Oregon. She's a retired pediatric nurse. The sound Barbara made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. She has red hair, George added softly. She never dyed it. Barbara's eyes found Tommy again, seeing in his features perhaps an echo of the sister she left behind. I've spent so long trying to be perfect, she whispered, trying to deserve being chosen, trying to make sure no one ever knew I was just Betty Smith from Street Mary's. Mom, Mark reached for her hand. You never had to be perfect. You just had to be you. Even Betty Smith? She asked in a small voice. Especially Betty Smith, I said. She sounds like she was a good sister. Maybe she still could be. Barbara looked at the folder, then at Tommy's hair. The feature she tried so hard to change, now a bridge to her past. I don't know how, she admitted. I don't know how to stop being Barbara Matthews and start being honest. Maybe, Tommy suggested, you could start by helping me grow my hair for kids who need it. Like Margaret helped kids who were hurt. For the first time in 15 years of family gatherings, I saw something real in Barbara's smile. I'd like that, she said softly. And maybe it's time to make a call to Oregon. As the evening wound down, I watched Barbara help Tommy gather the placement cards he'd made, handling them with a gentleness I'd never seen from her before. When she came to her own card, she paused. Tomorrow, she said, mostly to herself. Tomorrow, I'll call her. The perfect Matthews matriarch was cracking, letting glimpses of Betty Smith shine through. But as I watched her carefully pack Tommy's cards into her purse, I wondered how many more secrets were buried under decades of carefully maintained appearances. The next morning, while the rest of the family was still digesting both turkey and revelations, Barbara made the call to Oregon. I sat beside her in her immaculate living room, watching her hands shake as she dialed the number George had provided. What happened next would change everything. Margaret Smith speaking. A warm voice answered on speakerphone. The similarity to Barbara's natural voice, not her practiced Matthews tone, was striking. Barbara couldn't speak. Her perfectly manicured fingers pressed against her lips as tears rolled down her cheeks. Hello, Margaret said again. Maggie, Barbara finally whispered, her fake accent dropping completely. It's Betty. The silence that followed felt endless. Betty? Margaret's voice cracked. Little Betty. Not so little anymore, Barbara managed, attempting a laugh that came out more like a sob. 35 years, Margaret said softly. I looked for you at Street Mary's. They said you'd been adopted, but wouldn't tell me by who. The Matthews, Barbara explained. They made me promise. To forget me. The words held no anger, only sadness. I know Betty. I saw you once, about 20 years ago. At that fancy country club in the city. You looked so polished, so different. I didn't want to ruin your new life. Barbara's grip on my hand tightened. You saw me? You were hosting some charity event. I was there as a nurse for one of my patients. You had dark hair, designer clothes. You looked happy. I decided that was enough. I wasn't, Barbara confessed. Happy, I mean, I was perfect, but never happy. Then Margaret said something that shattered the last of Barbara's walls. Did they let you keep Mr. Whiskers? Barbara broke down completely. Through her tears, she explained to me, our sock puppet. We used to put on shows for the younger kids at Street Mary's. I still have him, Margaret said softly. I found him in your bed after you left. I've kept him all these years, hoping. That's when Tommy, who'd been quietly listening from the doorway, stepped forward. Grandma, is that your sister? The one who has hair like mine? Barbara wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup. Yes, sweetie. This is your great-aunt Margaret. The nurse who helped kids, Tommy moved closer to the phone. I'm helping kids too. I'm growing my hair for children with cancer. There was a pause, then Margaret's warm laugh filled the room. Well, isn't that something? I spent 40 years helping sick children, and now my great-nephew is doing the same. Barbara looked at Tommy's hair, the feature she tried so hard to change, and finally saw it for what it was, a bridge between past and present, between Betty Smith and Barbara Matthews, between lost family and found purpose. Maggie, Barbara said, her voice stronger now. Would you want to come for Christmas, meet your family? I'd love that, Betty. Or do you prefer Barbara now? Barbara looked at me, then at Tommy, then at her reflection in the window, smeared makeup, red eyes and all. Betty, she said firmly, with my family, I'd like to be Betty. As they finished their call with promises of future meetings and shared stories, I saw the weight of perfection lift from Barbara's shoulders. The Matthews matriarch was gone, replaced by something far more valuable, a real person with a real heart. Tommy hugged his grandmother, his auburn waves mixing with her dark hair. Does this mean I can keep growing my hair? Yes, she laughed, really laughed, for what felt like the first time in years. And maybe it's time I stopped dyeing mine too. As I watched them, I realized that sometimes the biggest acts of courage aren't in maintaining a perfect image, but in letting that image crack to reveal the truth beneath. Betty had spent decades building walls to protect herself from her past, only to find that those same walls had kept her from her future. Christmas would bring its own challenges, its own revelations, and possibly more Matthews family secrets tumbling out of carefully locked closets. But for now, watching my mother-in-law finally embrace who she really was, I knew we'd handle whatever came next. Because real family isn't built on perfect appearances or carefully curated bloodlines. It's built on love, acceptance, and sometimes on the courage to let your true self shine through, auburn waves and all.